Happy Wednesday to you. I want to talk today about a couple things with a story. And what is a story? How do we relate that with writing to a story? And then again, how do we relate it to our lives? So, first of all, the story. If you are writing the story, you are writing total fiction. It is a story that you have made in your mind, a story that you got an idea on, a story that you really have total control over, as opposed to your story. If you were writing your story, you're pretty much retelling something that happened to you that you actually experienced that would make a good story. And in my family, which is a family of storytellers, that was often quite entertaining. But I've been taking a master class with Judy Bloom, who is a children's author, but also an adult author, I've learned. And she gave this tip that I want to pass on to you, so I'm going to give her credit for it. She said, begin your story with what has changed. That pulls a person right in. You don't really have to give the backstory, which I tend to do when I am telling a story. I feel like, well, you must know these details. If they don't have to do with the story that is going forward, you really don't always have to know the details. So that may help you and myself to start right into where the story has changed. So when you're trying to think about, do I want to try my hand at fiction? Am I ready to do something with fiction? Maybe it's time to start with a story that you've thought of. What is a change that you've experienced that was pretty intense? That was a catalyst that put you right into a story, maybe one you really didn't even want to be in, but there you were. And that would help your story to progress. So I'm going to ask you some questions to help you think through this, because this is what I do. How much am I going to embellish the story, especially if it's my own story? And really, as the author, you have the rights to embellish it as much as you want. It doesn't have to be everything that truly happened to you. You can add a little detail from here, a little detail from there in a story. How much of this do you deny even happened? I think that is where we get into that crossing a line between my story and then what happens in real life. Sometimes we have things that happen to us that are so difficult, we don't want to deal with them. I'll speak for myself on that. And I can deny that they're even happening. I can put them over to this little place of think about it later, or maybe not ever at all. And that's really not healthy, but it does make for a good story. So if you're thinking about that yourself, maybe time to sit with something that you've been denying is happening, whether it's happening to you, a family member, just life in general, because when we bring those denial items out of that room where we've hidden them and we start looking at them, that's when we begin the healing process. So maybe you have a character that needs to go through a healing process, and that would make for a really good story. The other thing I sort of hinted at the beginning, stick with the facts. You don't really have to tell, when you are writing a story, every single fact that happened. If it does not move the story forward, it can probably be left out. And I would say that the same thing probably goes for your own life. When you are trying to talk to someone, when you're talking to a stranger, when you're talking to someone you don't know very well, don't do a whole dump of information, of too much background. You know, the TMI is really true. Sometimes we just don't need to know all that stuff in order for us to follow what you're saying. So the process of story writing, when we're looking at fiction, it does require you to do some thinking. I would suggest too, if you're going to choose fiction, if you are going to look at the story, not your story, but the one where you have total control over, go ahead and let all of everything that you've got in your head come down onto your paper. Don't worry too much in the first draft about, am I overtelling? Have I given too much information? Have I gone into embellishment too much? Have I really lost the track? Just get it all out there, because sometimes you have to dump all that out. And then for the second draft, you go back and go, oh, not needed, not needed. And then the delete key becomes your best friend. But if you get it out, then that helps you to get started. And it's like I said with I'm finding every Wednesday when I start working on these, even though I'm working on a writing skill, I'm also working on a life skill. And I hope those of you who are not writers but are enjoying the Wednesday words will also look at it in that way, because they're very closely related. And when I look at when are times when I might embellish something, when, you know, in the mood and the vein of storytelling, I'm going to add a little flair here and a little flair there. When do I cross the line? When am I going over into, you know, really lying, really out and out lying? Is it time to confess? Is it time to come clean with that? Is it time to really temper what I'm doing and stick with the embellishing and the story writing? How about denial? That can be a really coping skill for me that I am trying very hard to work on improving. And I will tell you, the touch typing program that I am using, which is a child's version of touch typing to try to help me learn how to keyboard, is tough. It is just tough. I don't like it. It's not fun. I'm getting frustrated, but I committed to the month of May, so I'm going to see practicing every day. I'm not in denial about it anymore. I guess what I'm trying to do is challenge myself to overcome my excuses of this just the way I am, to have I really tried to overcome this talent that I don't have? Have I really tried in recent time? And the answer was no. So let's give it one more try and see, and then maybe I'll go into complete acceptance of keyboarding just as a skill that is not mine. But I want to just make sure to remind us about just the facts. When you are telling a story, there is a fine line between overtelling and not telling enough, and going off into a second story from the first story, even when speaking. So when you're looking at your writing, maybe look at second draft. What in here veers off? What in here can I do without? Sometimes I even will start with a new document, a clean, beautiful piece of paper on my computer. I leave what I wrote in first draft, and then I take from that first draft to the second draft, or else I just start over and I just give myself a chance to practice. Let me try this a different way. I hope you have a really good week. I hope you do well with the things I said, embellishing, denying, and just the facts, and enjoy this day in May.